Hey guys, what's up? So if you haven't noticed, the last couple of weeks have been what we in the academic circles like to call a clusterfuck. As such, I have been somewhat at a loss for words or ideas of how to cover many of these topics. What I really want to do is I want to be able to provide useful or interesting information based on my own research. I can't really offer very many positive outcomes or suggestions. It's generally not what I like to do. But what I can do is describe what I think I'm seeing, and you can draw your conclusions for yourself. I'll draw my own conclusions, but as always, state your biases and I'll state mine. I absolutely hate what I see going on in the tech industry right now. I find it abhorrent, and I believe that it is on par essentially with McCarthyism. And yes, I am saying that as it refers to conservatives, but we will get into that later. I have a whole nother video planned where I'm going to talk about mass hysteria and moral panic. Even though I know it's a bit old hat at this point, this is an ongoing and breaking situation. So I wanted to apprise you guys a little bit of where I stand, some interesting research on the topic, and also what you can do, and what anyone can do, what any tech company should be doing, because at this point I'm starting to wonder, Google, what the fresh fuck are you doing? Hire some social scientists. Hire anyone who knows anything about what you're doing, because right now, you are destroying your company. The only problem is that I think you may be so ubiquitous that it's impossible to actually destroy you or do any damage. Anyway, I'm rambling, so let's get into the real meat of this. We kind of have to talk about shit that happened lately. I'm not the type of person who covers a whole ton of current events. I mean, I'll cover current events, but only when I can relate them to social science. Hey, as I will here. But particularly, I don't like to cover current events when those events are being extensively or even excessively covered by absolutely everyone else from every possible outlook, as everyone did about a week and a half ago. So, this is my outlook, and it's going to be from a very different standpoint, only because I can provide as such. But I don't know what else I can say that anyone else has not already said about the topic at hand, which is the nightmare situation that has occurred and is continually occurring at Google and numerous other tech companies. From the only real Nazi website of note that exists on the internet, the Daily Stormer, being booted from GoDaddy and Cloudflare, to white ethno-nationalist sites, and by the way, they are often different types of people, they don't always agree, but white ethno-nationalist sites such as Identity Europa being threatened with removal from Squarespace, who was, by the way, also called out by Ars Technica for hosting the repulsive and repugnant website FMI, or the Foundation for the Free Marketplace of Ideas, which brazenly flies the absolutely abhorrent Bill of Rights as their mission statement, to the removal of PayPal support from the ethno-nationalist organization Dyer, and to, finally, Apple PayPal bravely claiming they will be removing payment options for white pride apparel. And given that the American flag now is apparently a white pride symbol, well, I guess that means that Old Glory is likely soon to be off the Apple Pay shelves, isn't it? But let's start, as is best in all boring narrative structures, with the beginning, and the so-called manifesto published by Google employee James Damore.
The memo suggests Google has fewer female engineers because men are better suited for the job. In the memo published by Gizmodo, the Google employee said the company also initiatives of the company to increase diversity discriminate against some employees, and that a liberal bias among executives and many employees makes it difficult to discuss the issues at Google. Google's Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion sent a letter to employees on Saturday saying the employee's memo, quote, advanced incorrect assumptions about gender and is not a viewpoint the company endorses, promotes, or encourages.
Which made numerous citations regarding the differences between the means of men and women's average proclivities towards certain occupational outcomes due to disparate natures, such as women being more likely to be neurotic, more prone to anxiety, which we are, by the way, on average, or women being more interested in people rather than things, which we are, and which can be observed from infancy. We start to see baby females react to human faces much earlier than we see male babies react to human faces. They're averages. Or that women tend to be less likely to be assertive and assertively negotiate for higher wages. Hey, one of the reasons for the wage gap, such as it is, or is not more accurately, which again, yes, we are most definitely less likely to do. Women like to get along. All of these things are aggregates. All of them are statistics. That's it. everything that James Damore said in his manifesto.
Agent Scully, you are so kind-hearted. He's a nut. I just read his manifesto.
How did you get a copy?
One was sent to my publishers. I don't know what was most disturbing. His description of the
easily verifiable statistical differences between males and females.
or the fact that the whole thing is written in screenplay format.
It definitely was peculiar.
Was statistically accurate and yet, for some reason, was perceived as an anathema to the feeble minds of the average female Google employee who sought to show how emotionally strong and totally not neurotic she is by taking the next day off work to cope with the hardship of having been confronted with these relatively well-known and well-supported fucking facts. Ooh, wasn't that just the most delicious bit of irony? That's right, ladies. Yes, you show just how wrong James Damore is by exactly proving his point. Yeah. To disprove the statistical arguments made by this evil misogynist, just cry in a BuzzFeed-style video about how much averages upset you to the point that they make you incapable of doing your job when someone talks about them. Yeah, that will really show how right you are and how wrong he is. Sure showed me.
What does that mean?
As I was reading the manifesto, I couldn't help but wonder, how would these words sound coming out of the mouths of women?
What?
This guy's an ass.
Is bull. This is, what is this guy talking about? Men care more about things than women do?
I used to think that statistical data was an important way to assess trends in the population, but hey, thanks to you ladies, whining like little tiny children while demanding to be taken seriously.
Job recently started the Alliance of Magicians, an organization that blackballs any performer who reveals a magician's secret.
I now see that statistics are sexist and never based on a representative sample that can be used to make inferences about the whole. But really, friends, here's the point. Men and women are different. This is simply a fact. We know this from every level, be it sociological, biological, evolutionary. There is every reason to believe that men and women are different. We are a sexually dimorphic species. I recently put out a video that explained the normal curve, which Damore also explained it. He did it much more succinctly than I did, that's for sure, indicating in detail that if we were to break down men and women merely to their mean averages, would be extremely limiting, and actually does not only separate the sexes, but it tends to separate any groups with any notable differences. For example, and I'm not speaking for Damore here, but rather extrapolating upon his very liberally oriented memo, honestly, we find that African Americans are often taller and tend to have longer legs than Caucasian Americans. In part for this reason, they are often more likely to excel at some athletic activities, such as basketball. However, have you ever heard anyone complain that the NBA is comprised of a vast majority of African Americans? Where is the outrage there? Oh, there is none? That's right. Being talented in physical activities by the fucking way is of course completely unrelated to being talented intellectually, so before you make some outrageous assertion that what I just said is that black people can only into sports, first, you can go fuck yourself, and secondly, you can just fuck off because that's not what the fuck I just said, and if you think it is what I said, again, I would suggest you watch my video that serves as an introduction to descriptive statistics and the normal curve. What I am asking here is, where are these screeching harpies, these same screeching harpies making these BuzzFeed-esque videos about a lack of, let's say, Asian men in the NBA? Asians are a minority in need of defending, only when you feel like it, because we could totally be very racist against Asians when we find it convenient, like the guy at the Boston rally, Shiva.
Now I know as a person of color, and as a member, to anyone seeing this, as a member of the Indian low caste untouchables, you see, you won't find a lot of Indians like me here, because my parents were considered low caste. Lower caste than most of those people out there who don't even know what it means to be that.
Yeah, we can be totally racist against him. We can hate him, we can call him all kinds of names. Or Dinesh D'Souza, yes. Oh, fuck him. I guess being brown doesn't count when you're Indian. Anyway, my point is, where are all the Asians in the NBA? Isn't that super racist? I'm gonna give a little anecdote. The other day, I was driving through downtown Baltimore City, through one of the shittiest, most crime-infested, crime-riddled areas of town, and while it was a balmy 95 degrees outside, well, it felt like the surface of the fucking sun, and we drove past a group of young men digging a fucking ditch to repair the dilapidated road. Young, black men. Where are the feminist videos complaining that there aren't enough white women ditch diggers, huh? Well, maybe because those guys are engaging in grueling physical labor in a concrete volcano and not sitting at a desk in an air-conditioned adult playground like the Google offices, Yeah, ladies, until you also start screeching for equal representation in ditch digging and join those boys in the Baltimore projects digging up the street in the blistering heat, hey, that rhymed, then you should stop screeching altogether, you intolerable harpies. There are more men in highly competitive, highly stressful fields like technology making higher salaries that they bargained to earn for the same reason that there are more men in road construction. Men and women are different. Get over it. I got a stats for you, and there it is. But hey, here's the cool part about statistics. Statistics are never determinants. They're only predictives. They are only used to describe trends, and if you are offended by a trend, I suggest you just close your eyes and cover yourself with your blankie and suck your thumb until you wither away, because average trends will never not exist. Here's the thing that I think many leftists tend to be incapable of understanding. No one is equal. Not inherently. We will never be equal, and I not under the law. We are equal under the law, and we should be equal under the law. I mean, not everyone is born with the same gifts and talents. For example, I used to love nerdcore hip-hop. I recorded nerdcore hip-hop. Let me tell you right now, friends, you do not want to hear it. It's extremely embarrassing and cringy. That doesn't make something about me lesser. I mean, that's just an area where I don't excel. Not everyone is always going to be great at everything. Can you get the fuck over it? Aggregates have nothing to do with an individual being capable or incapable of achieving the same things as another individual. All that averages assess, and all that they deal with, is the fact that every single human is a unique individual, but we can use a sample of people in order to make predictive models. We really are kind of snowflakes in our own way. But we do have trends. That's all that an average is. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills that I keep having to explain this. Wow, we'll get into that. But as such, attempting to equalize all humans is not only silly, it's frankly a brain-dead display of futility. And you ask, well, why do we care anyway? Because we dump money into programs that try to equalize everyone. And I don't mean equalize under the law. I mean equalize outcomes. That's really dumb. What we can do with statistics is assess general trends about a population and make predictions based on those trends. We cannot fundamentally change an individual, no matter how much the government encourages women to go into STEM, no matter how many focus groups, no matter how many women's rights organizations say, oh, more women in STEM, they scream. There just aren't going to be way more women in STEM on average, because on average, women are just less interested in certain aspects of STEM, particularly some of the more object-oriented, the technical-oriented aspects of STEM. It does not mean anything about women being less intelligent. It does not mean women are bad at math. It means there are things about the fields in STEM that are unappealing to women. This is the reason why every fucking attempt to put more women in STEM over the last 30 years has resulted in so little demographic change in the field. It is not biological determinism, by the way. That is not what I'm saying. I'm talking about averages. But nothing about being a woman means you cannot be in STEM. It means you are less likely to be interested in STEM. That's all it means. It's kind of like humans are this weird product of hundreds of thousands of years of evolution and biology and have proclivities towards certain traits and activities based on that evolution. Weird, huh? You think white people are white because they just hated black skin so much that they expunged themselves of melanin? No! It's because of where the fuck white people lived, being colder, cloudier, rainier, and having less solar radiation and as such, less production of melanin. Pretty much everything about us, being that we are fucking animals, albeit exceptional animals, is a product of evolution and natural selection. That shit just doesn't go away. It doesn't go away because, oh, we decide we don't like it. White people just don't stop being white because they live in Arizona. And women don't just stop having more nurturing and caring traits because you told them they can work in a stressful, object-oriented rather than people-oriented role, just like a man does. Again, this is the same reason there is no feminist outrage calling for women to register for the draft, huh, Hillary?
From my perspective, the all-volunteer military has worked, and we should not do anything that undermines it because it has provided a solid core of people who are willing to serve our country. The idea of having everybody register concerns me a little bit unless we have a better idea of where that's going to come out.
Just because you said women can serve a role in the military, and many women do serve, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden every Sally and Jane is now suddenly going to go against every evolutionary rationale for being more passive, caring, agreeable, and preservative of the human species in favor of going full fortunate son. Because we're not seeing that, are we? Speaking for myself, because anecdote, why not? I have a pretty high IQ. And yes, for a woman, my IQ is particularly high. And as I have mentioned before in my descriptive statistic video, there is a greater tendency towards the mean, the average of about 100 IQ for women. But it doesn't mean there aren't still women with an extraordinarily high IQ. Hi, I'm still an idiot though, guys. Let's not joke around. But men do tend to have a wider IQ distribution with a greater standard deviation from the mean of 100. However, given the fact that I have a high IQ for a woman, I still went into a field that involves people. I didn't go into a purely technical field. I went into a field that involves communication and social psychology. Now, part of that is because I don't understand people very well from a personological level, but I sure do want to understand them. That's what drove me to this field. When I was in high school, I wanted to be an astrophysicist, even though I was absolute shit at math. But you give me one class on interpersonal communication, one class where my amazing professor cited social science research extemporaneously, and oh, I was hooked. I said, that's it. I cannot imagine ever wanting to do anything else. Again, from the standpoint of averages, my IQ, which is, again, a limited measure of intelligence, but a measure of generalized intelligence, I'm basically a mutant. But also from the standpoint of averages, like many women, I was drawn into a field concerned with human interaction. Almost like everyone is different, but averages are still valuable to draw conclusions about the general population on. I'm getting very far away from the point, and I really shouldn't get into all that statistics shit because apparently talking about statistics, even as a real, esteemed, legitimate statistician and not a lowly student such as myself, will get you banned from Google now for breaking their terms of service over hate speech? They weren't very clear. And that does segue back to the crux of this video and my real point, which is on the importance of YouTube, a subsidiary of Google. Given that Google has proven fairly succinctly that they do not support actual quality, and certainly not meritocracy, given their swift firing of James Damore merely for his forwarding of basic statistical data, and further, given that over the last week or so, we have seen channels that run the gamut of the political spectrum from ascendant alt-centrists who still mistakenly label themselves as liberals, for some reason, like my boy Hard Bastard, to libertarian or conservative type channels like Dave Cullen's Putin Forever, or Paul Joseph Watson, who totally left YouTube completely, to left-leaning centrists like Mr. Repsion or Sugar Tits, having essentially all of their videos demonetized. And given the recent collaboration of YouTube with the ADL and unofficially, or officially unofficially, Anita Sarkeesian, it's no real question anymore that there is a witch hunt against anyone who dares to question Google's political narrative. And by the way, friends, I have not been totally demonetized yet, but am I asking for it now? Please don't demonetize my fucking channel, please. But yeah, fuck me. I'm sure I'm going to be on that chopping block real quick.
Real quick. Real fucking quick, niggas.
Given that all I do is cite statistics, and as I've just shown you, statistics are now officially sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, terrible, terrible, horrible things that will get even respected academics kicked from Google. I should point out that that particular statistician has had his Google account restored, as was the case when Dr. Jordan Peterson had his Google account suspended for no apparent reason. But that's likely because Dr. Peterson and the statistician had a lot of outcry that appeared after they were suspended, particularly given that there was no real reason offered for their suspension. And that's a big part of what I want to talk about, in that public outcry does have an effect here. People have a very unique relationship with online figures that they interact with through YouTube and through Twitter, one that is quite different from traditional media figures, very different from traditional parasocial relationships. As such, although I've talked about psychological reactance before, and a lot of you may be thinking, well, of course people are going to get upset, this is that thing, psychological reactance, this is the Streisand effect, essentially, correct? That when you take away someone's freedoms, no shit, we're going to react violently. That's true. And if you'd like to know more about psychological reactance, I did a whole video on that. But this is a little different. I'm going to go into a slightly different area area of research today. I'm going to be talking about computer-mediated communication. That is, the shit that we do online, how we interact with people, and how it is a very unique method of communication that allows us to form different relationships with people in a different manner than we would in face-to-face, or even than we would with traditional media figures. As such, what we're going to be talking about today, and the real purpose of this video, is in discussing the unique aspects of internet communication. But before we go into that, I want to make one last point about YouTube, and that is that despite how terrifying all this demonetization is, nothing to me is more harrowing than the introduction of limited mode. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this by now, but if you're not, limited mode is this new piece of absolute 1984 Orwellian-esque censorship that YouTube is rolling out, where in certain videos we put into a special little condition wherein they can only be viewed by people with a direct link. They cannot be seen from searches on the site. They do not show up with any recommended videos. There is no way to find these videos outside of having an exact URL. Further, you cannot even embed these videos, and it is already happening. Mr. Medicare located that one of Jared Taylor's video was one of the first videos to be put into this limited state, and since then also has at least one of Black Pigeon Speaks videos. Videos that, yes, may be uncomfortable to some people, and therefore, yes, may be controversial, but they are controversial because they are things that need to be discussed. They are things that we need to hear. And given that I have discussed race and IQ, and the Jared Taylor video was the first one that I had seen anyone point out that it had been put in this limited state. Again, don't be surprised if my shit ends up on this kind of blacklist very soon as well. I mean, you have to look at the world that we're living in now. Everyone is a Nazi. Facts are hurtful. Feels over reals. They're admitting it. They're not even just implying it at this point. Feels over reals. You cannot talk about facts or statistics anymore, even if you're not trying to use them in any kind of hateful way. I have very little agenda. One thing I said in one of my first videos is state your biases, and I absolutely stand behind that, and I always do. I am a libertarian conservative. I do have a bias. However, when it comes to research, I'm only interested in finding answers. Really, I'm just trying to understand things. I'm not really looking to prove myself right. Here's the thing. There's this concept, cognitive dissonance, which is essentially that it's very psychologically uncomfortable for us to be faced with ideas that contradict things we already believe. As such, we want to avoid that information. What we do instead is we go through a process of selective exposure. We only look for research or information that confirms the things we already believe, and particularly when we are confronted with conflictatory information, we want to go out and selectively expose because it reduces the cognitive dissonance when you are presented with conflictatory information. Not to suck my own dick, I actually find it much more interesting to prove a null hypothesis than to prove the hypothesis, because if I have done weeks worth of research, I am very certain that I will find and accept my hypothesis, and then despite all my best efforts and my best research, I still find the null. That means that my hypothesis was disproven. That's fascinating to me. The problem is that kind of research often gets file drawered, which means that it doesn't get published, but that kind of result is the result I am most excited about, because it means something in the literature, either something in the literature or something in my data analysis or something in my experimentation process was incorrect. It means it's something that needs to be studied further. I love that kind of shit. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off topic again. What I really want to talk about here is not Google itself, although there's all kinds of problems here, but specifically YouTube as a platform, and how it is unique, and how it allows users to interact and interface with content and media, and given that unique aspect of the format, how the destruction of YouTube, and they are destroying YouTube in particular, is fucking retarded for Google. Google, YouTube, if you're listening to me, I am trying to actually help you not drive your business into the ground. Even if your goal is only ideological, at some point you are going to fail in your duty to your shareholders by not providing revenue. As such, let's talk about the unique nature of YouTube and computer-mediated communication at large. Now, I may use the term computer-mediated communication a little bit here. The fact of the matter is that that term CMC is a bit old hat. We don't use it very often anymore, but I'm referring to some of the seminal research, so I will use CMC when applicable. So the old school definition is this: synchronous or asynchronous electronic mail and computer conceiving by which senders encode in text messages that are relayed from senders' computers to receivers. That's Walther 1992. You see how this is a little still dated? Again, just kind of update it. Move with me here. CMC and research regarding it initially tended to be text-based, although new media has resulted in a variety of methods of communicating remotely that can include audio, visual information, or even interaction through a digital body, that's an avatar. All methods of CMC, however, lack the ability to send and receive complete one-to-one, at least at this point, non-verbal information in the same richness as face-to-face communication. This is what we call media richness theory, in that text is highly specific, but also very high in ambiguity of emotion. You ever read a text from somebody and you can't tell if they're being sarcastic or not? That's the problem with pure text. Text is considered lowest in media richness, whereas face-to-face FTF communication is considered the pinnacle, the highest point of media richness. What do we have now in places like Twitter, where you can use emojis and images, and then things like Skype, where you can have video calls? Well, they all lie somewhere in between the maximum high of FTF, face-to-face, and the maximum low of pure text-based communication. And while face-to-face is, as I said, typically lower in ambiguity of emotion, it also is frequently less specific in terms of instructions. It's harder to get things through to people and telling them what they have to do for a number of reasons. People can misinterpret your emotions. They can misinterpret you because of some lack of communication skill you have. So, as such, they are more open to interpretation of specificity. CMC and FTF communication have been found to have similar levels of interpersonal intimacy, despite lacking nonverbal cues. That's Walther 1995. That is that even though we can't display these total nonverbals, we can use proximal methods of displaying nonverbal intimacy and getting to know people very well. Emojis are an excellent example. Using a simple heart icon. That shows some level of intimacy despite the fact that you can't hug the person. You're not actually hugging them, you're not actually interacting with them physically, but you can do some sort of workarounds. As a result, what we find is that CMC has the ability to, quote, liberate individuals from social influence, group pressure, and status and power differences that characterize much face-to-face interaction. That's Postmes, Spears, and Leah, 1998, page 698. This liberating potentiality comes from the effects of anonymity that are associated with CMC. But I do want to point out that quote in particular. This is astonishing, right? This is how anonymity goes both ways. It can both liberate you from group pressure and status and power, and it can also allow others to call you a Nazi and insist that you need to lose your job. Fuck, right now they're saying we all need to be killed, I think, pretty much. But let's get back to what the entire idea of deindividuation or anonymity is, as it pertains to CMC. Personal information is partially concealed in many forms of CMC, and YouTube is certainly included in that. Why the fresh fuck do you think I use an avatar rather than a video camera? Well, for that same reason. I'm trying to obfuscate my real person for some reason. The lack, however, of nonverbals in CMC and the frequency of low-richness text-based communication obfuscates communicators from one another, resulting in potential deindividuation. That's Zimbardo 1969. Deindividuation is really just kind of a different term for anonymity, but it does have certain connotations, which is that anonymity causes a decreased sense of self-awareness and self-regulation. A lack of nonverbal cues forces communicators to rely primarily on context and message content to understand meaning, Walther 1995, rather than the nonverbals. That is, when we don't have body language to tell us what we're supposed to be thinking or feeling, when, somebody moves closer to you, you know that they're into you, they shy away, you know they're kind of turned off. We don't have this, so we can't really tell how people are feeling. Even though we do have these proxies, we do lack some of the communication forces that individuate people from us. I cited Zimbardo 1969, which essentially was that, well, when you put a bag over someone's head and obfuscated their face, participants were willing to beat the shit out of those people. They didn't view them as other humans, essentially. Wow, where have I seen that before? There are both positive and negative effects, however, of deindividuation. I should be clear. In fact, the reason I became interested in deindividuation is because I was a very shy person, and I found the internet liberating because I could say whatever I wanted. But here are the two basic types, positive and negative, of deindividuation. Toxic and benign disinhibition. Due to the uninhibited nature of a deindividuated state, communication that is enacted in a deindividuated environment tends to elicit more self-disclosure. You can look Joynson, 1998, for that. That means that communicators can speak freely without fear of repercussions. More negatively, deindividuation can also be a factor in online bullying. Oh my god, where do I even start with a citation on that? There are so many. There are so many things to cite there. It's also something called the cockpit effect. Basically, when you don't see the person that you're hurting or bullying, you're not going to feel any guilt when you pick on them. But I will cite Dyer, Green, Pitts, and Milward 1995. That's old school shit again. But despite all that online bullying shit, here's what we find. Individuals tend to disclose significantly more information about themselves, they disclose more frequently, and disclose more personal information online than in face-to-face communication over a short period of time. That's Tidwell and Walther 2002. Dietz-Uhler, Bishop, Clark, and Howard 2005 found that participants were more likely to disclose extensively in online groups where disclosure was encouraged and across online contexts even when disclosure was not explicitly encouraged. What that means is that, well, because you're not at any real risk of being found out, of being doxxed, or that used to be the case. Again, this is still ongoing, but we do find that much of Walther's research, he's the one who came up with this hyper-personal model I'm about to describe, is that this still happens. You ever meet somebody on the internet and you feel like you know them instantly, immediately, they're your best friend? It's happened to me well more than once. Online communicators experience less vulnerability and fear that disclosure could negatively affect interactions outside of the online communication, and that's why. Anonymous persons or de-individuated persons or pseudonymous persons may not experience possible negative effects of disclosure. This is changing, again, because now, well, doxing's the cool thing to do, at least as long as you're on the right. Yeah, dox the shit out of that person. Make sure they lose their job. But typically, it did make CMC a unique arena for self-expression due to said de-individuation effects. But this is Walther's hyperpersonal model of computer-mediated communication, which is one of several models or descriptives that identify how online communication functions. In the hyperpersonal model, despite the fact that we cannot interact directly with a person online the way that we would in a face-to-face environment, the relative anonymity of the internet removes some of the stigma of social interaction. As such, we feel more capable of revealing information about ourselves, and when we see others revealing information about themselves, we tend to take it to heart. That person is being just as honest as I am. That is, when you're watching a YouTuber, for example, and sorry for this way long research aside that got for me to get back to the point, when you are watching a YouTuber talk about something, particularly when they're talking about him or herself, you may begin to feel as if you were forming a sort of relationship with that person. A very strong relationship because of the lack of a social barrier typically present in face-to-face communication. In fact, this is unidirectional, isn't it? You don't even have to give input. You can give input, but it may not be reciprocated. There is a difference in that, much like any form of media, as I said, on YouTube in most situations, the speaker is not directly dictating to you, but rather to the audience at large. You may ask then, why even mention all of this research that describes how we come to feel very close to people online when YouTubers, well, they're just media figures, right? Well, because there does appear to be a difference. For one, YouTubers very frequently tend to respond to comments and questions to super chats. They're typically pretty approachable and reachable via Twitter, if not in the comments sections as well. Outside of massive figures like PewDiePie, you can kind of get in touch with anyone. Even Pewds seems to be pretty approachable compared to any massive Hollywood star. Moreover, many YouTubers engage in user involvement to a very unique degree. They talk to their audience, they engage their audience, they ask their audiences to do shit with them. Think about all that I've just said regarding disclosure, and then consider someone like Boogie, someone that many love because of his level of disclosure, because of his honesty and openness, because his viewers feel as if they know him, and they feel so strongly that they know him through a twofold CMC effect, both through this hyperpersonal model, as I have previously described, and through what I am about to describe, and have done before, parasocial relationships. But let's start with a PSI. A parasocial interaction, or a PSI, is an individual instance of feeling as though one is engaging in an interpersonal-like event with a media figure. That's Horton and Wall 1956 as the seminal work. PSIs are possible given that people tend to be unable to react differently to images we see in media than as we normally would to non-mediated items. That is, psychologically, we have a really difficult time distinguishing between a media portrayal of a person and a physical person actually in front of us in terms of how we respond to them. Yes, think of the people screaming in the movie theater meme. Oh no, look out behind you, there's a guy. When people react like that, it's because we have this very short temporary cognitive heuristic, this temporary mental shortcut, in that we react from a fight, flight, freeze-based response, not from rationality, not from being able to actually process this information. We struggle to momentarily differentiate between a real person and a person that we're seeing in the media. Again, once we have enough time to actually think about what we're looking at, we can process these things as separate. That's why this video game violence stuff doesn't really result in any kind of long-term behavioral change, but it does increase arousal, because in the short term, it's very difficult for our brains, which are not evolutionarily designed to differentiate between what is media and what is real life. Well, then it makes sense. Again, this is why we become aroused by the media, but why doesn't outside of massive and very frequent interaction have any real effect on our behaviors? This is just our hypothalamus, the part of our brain that determines fight, flight, freeze, how we should be reacting to the thing that we are seeing in front of us. Because we're animals, when we see something that is frightening us, or we see something that's potentially dangerous, our immediate reaction is not to think about it too deeply. It's to determine, how do I react? That's all a cognitive heuristic is, as I've described many times. Part of that is, though, is that media, such as we know it, has only existed for about 100 years. Although there is sequential artistry that has existed for pretty much the entirety of human history. Media, in terms of moving pictures, well, that's quite new. And our brains are just not evolved to understand how to react to it adequately, or accurately. PSIs are the illusion, though, of being present with a media figure and interacting with him or her, or it, given that media figures are perceived as real. They're perceived as real by our brains, and there's evolutionary reasons for that. You want to know one thing in particular that encourages the experience of a parasocial interaction? It's something called direct address, wherein the media figure breaks the fourth wall and speaks directly to the audience. Have you ever watched a YouTube video before? What are we all doing? We're all speaking directly to our audience, and I hate the term fan. That's what we're all doing. We're speaking directly to the people watching our shitty videos. And yeah, that alone encourages a parasocial interaction. Additionally, having the camera face the media figure directly, as you see in many YouTube videos, as if the figure is placed in front of the viewer. I'm talking to you interpersonally. I'm having a one-on-one conversation with you, as much would be the case in a normal face-to-face interaction. That also can elicit and encourage parasocial interaction experience. So those are parasocial interactions. Parasocial relationships are potentially long-term unidirectional, usually defined as unidirectional, or traditionally defined as unidirectional, I should say, pseudo-interpersonal relationships that are formed between an individual and a media character. See E.L. on Daily 2012. Reliant on PSIs, PSRs further rely on the cognitive difficulties in distinguishing media figures from real people. Although parasocial relationships often contain individual instances of PSIs, PSRs last outside of the media context itself. A PSI is a thing happening right at this moment. Oh no, don't go into that door, there's serial killers in there. That's a PSI. A PSR is feeling like you know a person and you know them for a long period of time and you think about them, or you simply wonder what they're up to at any random time of the day. You know, you're sitting at your desk at work or just laying on the couch and you wonder, I wonder what PewDiePie is up to right now. Just like you would with a typical friend. That is now a parasocial relationship. It has become elevated from a single instance of a parasocial interaction into a relationship. You get excited when you see that they've uploaded a video, because essentially what that video is a new instance of interaction. A new chance to hang out with your friend, somebody that you know, because you're involved in a parasocial relationship with that person. In short, PSIs happen in response to media, while PSRs last and can be maintained similar to any other type of interpersonal relationship, again see E.L. on Daily 2012. People react to and feel similarly to media figures as they do about their friends. We form relationships with characters. Fur, 1996, lists several elements involved in a relationship formation, including proximity, attraction, similarity, and frequency of contact. Well, let's look at all of those things. Let's go backwards. How about that? Proximity, not a whole lot. Maybe if you find out the YouTuber lives in your town, that, maybe increases your proximity. Attraction, however, well, attraction can be different levels. It can be psychological attraction or physical attraction. Similarity, people tend to watch people who are similar to them, who agree with them. And frequency of contact, for fuck's sake, I'm on Twitter every goddamn day, guys. You can contact me anytime. As such, encouraging positive, attractive qualities in a media figure and viewing that figure frequently stimulates the development of a parasocial relationship. And for YouTubers who are trying to encourage positive, attractive qualities of themselves in order to maintain a viewership, well, imagine my shock that we end up in parasocial relationships with the people who watch our shitty videos. My point in stating any of this beyond just providing my normal, typical, rambling social science information is that YouTube personalities are not your typical media figure. Given the hyper-personal model and various effects associated with computer-mediated communication, and the effects of parasocial relationships through repeated parasocial interaction, YouTube personalities are not the same thing as your typical Hollywood celebrity. They interact with their viewers, and they're involved in the same type of online communication as their viewers, resulting in greater disclosure on both sides of the aisle, and as such, a greater propensity for the development of feelings of closeness from said viewers, given the parasocial relationship is formed through this online interaction. That is, YouTube personalities are uniquely close to their audience, and if YouTube and Google want to choose to demonetize and remove those figures, they are essentially not removing a media figure. You're not just canceling a television show. And it's not like that hasn't had catastrophic and long-term fan outcry in and of itself, because, again, parasocial relationships are not limited to YouTube. They are very much present in terms of how we react to media figures in general. I mean, do I have to really bring up Firefly? Yeah, I guess I do. If it's that bad in terms of a television show, imagine how bad it is when it comes to people that you perceive as your friends, personal friends, because of a lot of these effects. You are removing and hurting someone's friend. In some of the loneliest periods of my life, I survived through my parasocial relationships with all kinds of media figures. First with Spock, or later with podcasting figures who I was in part so close to because they were internet personalities. They were approachable. I could communicate with them if I really tried. With everyone from more public figures of Tom Segura and Christina Pajitsky, comedians, to the more YouTube-oriented figures, you know, JonTron, Franku, iDubbbz, H3H3, etc. Please, see, I have actual fucking art of them hanging in my room of proof for my pure faggotry. What I'm saying here is that YouTube is a really unique media platform that allows for a method of interaction between creator and viewer that is really elsewhere unattainable. As such, it causes viewers to often feel as if they are friends with the creators. Christ knows I've felt that way, as I just embarrassingly explicated. And that's towards people with huge audiences. In my case, I have absolutely become friends with people that I have met through this shit because they were watching my content, my absolute shit content. And that is a completely disparate situation from your typical average Hollywood actor. Even a Z-list porn star interacts less with their audience than the average YouTuber. Well, you know, interaction in one direction. There's certainly a lot of interaction going on in the other direction. It's one of the many reasons why I hate this idea of referring to people who watch my shit as fans, because you're my constituents more than anything. My audience at best? Even if you like my content, the term fan sort of implies a power differential that I don't find appropriate to describe YouTube or any of this shit. The point is that if Google thinks they can just shut down YouTube without massive public dissent, they're wrong. Google, you are wrong. Destroying someone's YouTube channel is not the same as canceling a television show. And we know how much canceling a beloved television show can piss people off for, I don't know, a couple of decades. But no, tearing down a YouTube channel is not just canceling a TV show, it's fucking with someone's friend. It's not fucking with a stranger who plays a character on television, even if you love that character. It is fucking with someone we feel we know, we feel we are close to emotionally. While we may feel close to all sorts of media figures, I was really close to Spock, as I said, be they characters or the actors themselves, the hyper-personal and interactive nature of a platform like YouTube makes YouTube figures unique, in that we are more likely to view them as more than just someone we like, but as someone we know as a close friend. You know what nobody likes? Some fucking asshole, some rich asshole, screwing with their close friend. This is why the entire internet revolted against the Wall Street Journal painting PewDiePie as a Nazi, because Felix is our friend. Or at least to those of us who have watched his content for an extended period of time. This girl. Likely, yeah, we perceive him as sort of our friend. Moreover though, I must ponder, Google, Why? Why is one of the largest and most powerful tech companies, to say nothing of these smaller companies as I mentioned in the outset, why are you, one of the largest tech companies on the planet, seemingly incapable or perhaps unwilling of dealing with the issue of Adblock? The problem is that YouTube has not been very profitable, guys, okay? It's never been the most profitable aspect of Google. But my question is, if you're having a problem with being profitable, why don't you deal with Adblock? If Google is complacent to abandoning YouTube and its millions of users that engages in a systematic campaign of destruction of content creators and so-called wrongthink, given that the platform is relatively financially unprofitable, why then has that self-same company done absolutely fucking nothing to deal with Adblock? As has pretty much every other streaming service on the fucking internet. By that, I mean this. Go to some shitty anime streaming site, or go to the goddamn Washington Post with Adblock turned on, and you will get a pop-up at a very minimum asking you to whitelist the page, and at the most, preventing you from accessing the content without whitelisting. Now, those of us with a modicum, and when referring to myself, I absolutely cannot overemphasize just how minute my technical prowess is. Women in tech, am I right? But really, it is not very difficult to halt the JavaScript on the page that prompts these pop-ups.
Oh man, what am I gonna do? Do I really have to disable my ad blocker? Oh wait, it's Opera, it's got it built in. I can't disable it. Or maybe I can. Oh, what's this? Oh wow.
Let's be real though, even among users of Adblock, the majority of people would most likely rather just click on a simple whitelist or a pausing of the extension rather than manually blocking the JavaScript, given the already very small percentage of users who would even know how to do so. As such, I must then wonder why YouTube, owned by tech powerhouse Google, has not implemented a simple deterrent against Adblock when the entirety of their revenue comes from advertisements, and they are seemingly willing to sacrifice YouTube as a platform due to its lack of ad revenue, deleting content creators, and destroying anything that makes any money on this website. Well, gee, Google, that sure is a tricky one, isn't it? Maybe if you just made a tiny little bit more annoying to access YouTube videos while using an ad blocker, the website make a tiny little itty bitty bit more money. Moreover, gee, if I could pay YouTube to avoid advertisements altogether in a world where that did pose any fucking difficulty, no matter how minute, to block those advertisements while using the website on a PC, well, maybe I would be more incentivized to purchase your YouTube Red service. Are you listening, YouTube? Right now, the only reason to purchase Red really is to watch YouTube videos on your phone ad-free, to support your favorite creators with a couple more percentages of a half of a shekel than a normal view would provide, or to watch absolutely garbage tier YouTube Red original content. Yeah, that's not really drawing anyone to YouTube Red beyond absolutely crazy fangirls. My point is that this situation is actually quite easy to resolve, or at least mitigate. Google and its subsidiary YouTube just combat the ad blockers, which as a tech company you should be well capable of doing if you put even in a minimal amount of effort. Of course, given that you are staffed by women who are so offended by the very notion that men and women are different and made more or less desired jobs in technical fields due to propensities for human-based interaction and a greater likelihood of neuroticism that you all have to take a fucking day off of work to mourn.
I'm fascinated how a person's sense of consciousness can be so transformed by nothing more magical than listening to words. Mere words.
Then I guess perhaps I'm starting to understand why you're seemingly incapable of reaching this blatantly obvious conclusion. And here's why I think they're incapable of reaching that conclusion. Because they're not interested in reaching that conclusion. What they are instead interested in is virtue signaling, and ensuring that they can turn a positive face towards the vicious prawn attack that is social justice, social media, without caring when that face gets eaten off, as SJWs always do when they turn on their own as they fail to pass the constant purity tests necessary for their very existence. While it seems that there is a slow crawl back to the status quo with Mr. Repsion's videos getting monetized again, with several people getting new videos monetized, it also seems that for every video or every channel that gets a couple of videos monetized again, another gets more of their videos demonetized. There are many videos that have come out that have had nothing, absolutely nothing about them that were objectionable in any way, and yet were still considered not advertiser friendly because there was something about the channel that had been put on a blacklist, plain and simple. And yes, for every channel that gets a video monetized, another one is going to be put in this restricted mode. This is a never-ending battle. And even if some things are coming back, here's the real problem. It is once again going on behind the scenes, and the public face is still flashing this wide, repulsive smile of social justice and diversity as YouTube teams up with the ADL to end cyberbullying? Yeah, this is how you end cyberbullying. How fucking harassing. I'm so triggered I've turned into an NRA commercial. Oh wait, that's even more triggering, isn't it? Anyway, the point is that Google, even if they started reversing all of this in private, in public, as long as they continue to support this virtue signaling bullshit, as long as they continue to kick respected statisticians off of their website, as long as they continue to deplatform people for no reason, they will drive their user base away, no matter how ubiquitous they are. Maybe not Google at large, but YouTube, absolutely. Why are you trying to destroy an already barely profitable platform, Google? Why? Frankly, I'm astounded that PewDiePie didn't absolutely leave YouTube after he was lambasted and labeled a Nazi earlier this year. I mean, he has somewhat. He's moving to Twitch and focusing more on long gameplay streams. But he's YouTube's biggest star. And much like we're Twitter to ban Donald Trump and, oh, you know, Jack keeps his finger on the button every single goddamn day just dreaming about it, the removal of these types of figures would be the death knell for those platforms. And by the way, at least in terms of Twitter, if you want to speed that time of death up a little bit, consider sending this to some of your left-leaning friends who hate Trump so deeply. There's this woman who is trying to buy enough of Twitter's stocks to be able to ban Trump. Again, as I'm intimating here, that would destroy the platform. And if it destroys Twitter, it means that people will go elsewhere. They will move to Gab. Just like with YouTube, they will move to other places. And by the way, here's a list of a few YouTube alternatives. I myself will in fact be probably starting to move my content over more to VidMe. I'm not exactly sure what I want to do. My only real goal here on YouTube is to be entertaining, but I'm not going to fucking lie. Hey, getting paid is nice. YouTube ad rev is very helpful. And it's not just the money. It also has to do with the fact that we're not even allowed to speak anymore. If Jared Taylor is going to be completely censored on this website, well, I'm certainly going to be. There is no way my pussy pass can last out that long. So yes, I will have to be in the near future moving to other platforms, as will most people. So again, here on the screen, there's a list of a couple of websites that you can check out if you haven't seen them before. While I admit I'm only really present right now on YouTube and Twitter, I am looking at uploading more consistently on VidMe and Minds, knowing that YouTube is a sinking ship, and it's sinking because they have placed the cart before the horse. You placed idiotic and financially backward politics before the content creators who make your website even slightly profitable. Without your major players, what is it, YouTube? Why, it's a bunch of 12-year-olds uploading their Minecraft gameplay, and that sure as fuck isn't very profitable, now is it? Instead, that money goes all right down the server drains. As I mentioned, even tiny alterations could make YouTube a more profitable space, but Google clearly has no interest in actually profiting, at least not at this point. And as a technological megalith, why should they? They can afford to sink a few ships under their armada if it means appeasing feminists they mistakenly believe to be still in power. Meanwhile, these same tech giants seemingly have no issue with organizations like Antifa that now has hundreds of thousands of signatures on a petition to the White House to be declared a terrorist organization nationally, which they should be, and hopefully they will be. No, we have to continue to support Antifa. We have to continue to allow ISIS videos and ISIS accounts on our websites. But someone with conservative opinions, even nominally conservative opinions, no, they are engaging in wrongthink and they must be removed. This level of propaganda is not profitable. Do you understand that? In the long run, it will cost you dollary dues. And in the long run, that is against everything businesses are supposed to engage in. It is against the interests of your shareholders. And while George Soros and many of these tech fat cats may have deep pockets, at some point they will have to follow the money. I truly do believe that. At some point, virtue signaling becomes just too expensive. And while at this point, yes, we are in the minority, and yes, Google is ubiquitous, it's seemingly inescapable. If we refuse to allow them to control us, if we move and if we show our opinions with our wallets, then there is something we can do. We're in a dark place, but this is not hopeless, nor is it over. There are still things we can do. And again, voting with your wallet is probably the best thing you can do. If this is the way they're going to behave, then they're over. There is nothing they can do. They are attacking our friends, and no one is going to stand for that. At some point, business is business, and the ultimate goal of a business is to provide profit to its shareholders. And when the money dries up, oh trust me, so will all of this insufferable virtue signaling. As soon as this starts to have an effect on the bottom line, the real bottom line, I think you're going to start to see a little bit of the rolling back. Right now, and trust me, I feel this way too, it may appear as if we are in the pit of an inescapable well of abject hopelessness, but the reason I just described all of this shit in this incredibly long video about parasocial relationships is because I don't think it is inescapable. YouTubers haven't just made an audience, they have made friends, and they've made friends with those people who watch them, not just with each other. I don't give a shit about making friends with other YouTubers. I mean, I am, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here to be entertaining and maybe interesting and provide some research. That's it. But the thing about friends is that friends will not sit idly by as those that they care about are harmed, are deplatformed. This is why YouTube is unique, but also why it will destroy itself, or potentially already has. For all of my sarcasm and cynicism, I have usually been pretty positive about YouTube these last few months, always thinking the company will eventually follow the money. And they will, that's without question. The problem is, how far are they willing to sink before following the money becomes something that is not just done behind the scenes, but done publicly and openly? I mean, when will YouTube get so desperate they will beg Pewds to get back on YouTube Red as their headliner? Not to say that he would agree to at this point, but therein kinda lies the issue, isn't it? Like with Paul Joseph Watson. YouTubers are leaving the site because of how the platform has treated them, not as assets, but as liabilities. And with new sites popping up all the time, no matter how hard they try to destroy them, we're gonna keep fighting, man. It will quickly become impossible for YouTube to deny that its content creators are and always have been the source of their revenue, no matter how relatively meager it is in the Google grand scheme. Again, only a few minor changes could seemingly make the site far more financially viable, yet they are unwilling to implement them, it seems. As such, this may be the first death rattle of YouTube. Given they are owned by Google, it will stick around for a long fucking time, but for the last month or so, it has been nothing but bad PR move after bad PR move after bad PR move. And this is all in the wake of many other bad PR moves. As such, YouTube and Google are going to bleed a bit. They won't hurt too bad, and they certainly won't die, but they will bleed, and they're bleeding. And when the information comes back to the shareholders, the purpose, again, of a company being to provide profit to shareholders, well, then just a few feet may be stamped on the floor of this virtue signaling bullshit. My point in this long video is multifold. 1. Google is out of touch and has massively alienated a large portion of their audience with a direct denial of science, with the firing of a man for merely mentioning the fact that the company had a problem with ideological diversity by removing him for being ideologically diverse. 2. YouTube is a unique platform that allows for intense parasocial relationships to be formed between creators and viewers that causes, more so than television or really any other form of media, viewers to see content creators as their personal friends, and friendship means loyalty. 3. That YouTube seemingly doesn't want to maximize their opportunities for financial success, favoring instead virtue signaling and PC policing. And finally, my conclusion here, 4. That the previously mentioned components will mean YouTube will either need to evolve or die. Natural selection, sorry, statistics once again, and mistreatment when it comes to how the platform handles their friends, and while being non-profitable for a while may fly, eventually these shareholders will want results, and results will not come from this current system. Finally, it may actually be too late for YouTube, having committed so many egregious offenses already, and failing to even once apologize for them. Not even say, hey, sorry, we fucked up, as nor has Google in their firing of James Damore commented on anything but affirmation of his firing and even his blacklisting. We are seeing this more and more after Boston, and it will be my next video. It becomes every day more and more acceptable to just destroy someone because you don't agree with them. But that's not going to be the case forever. The tides are turning. This is no longer acceptable behavior. People are on to your bullshit. It's not acceptable from a financial perspective, nor from a sociological perspective. You have to adapt or die. You are killing yourselves. And that's the end word. Because if you don't change your public face, the face will be criticized and hated by the social justice types that you try to appease, no matter how pure you play yourself up to be. You're always going to be hated by them because you will never be pure enough for them. And what you have done instead is you have driven away anyone who actually made you money. The money will leave, and it is leaving. And Google, I gotta tell you this, don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? And very soon, you keep this shit up, it's gonna be gone. If you enjoyed this very long video, guys, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'm Aiden Paladin, Altana Volt. Leave over content, maintain a vacant site with forced diversity and no hint of the right. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? Pave over content, maintain a vacant site. They took all the content, put it in demonetized jail, and thought all the people wouldn't want to see them fail. Don't it always seem to go that they don't know what they've got till it's gone? Pave over content, maintain a vacant site. Hey Google, Google, put away the ban hammer now. Give me wrong, think opinions and leave me free thought and speech. Please, don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? Pave over content, maintain a vacant site. Late last night, I heard a lack of ads, as the advertisers pulled away from this fad. Don't it always seem to go that they don't know what they've got till it's gone? Pave over content, then maintain a vacant site.